Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room, say almost nothing, and yet every single person felt their presence? That is the top 1% communicator, not the loudest, not the smartest, not the busiest, the one who understands one simple truth. Great communication is not about effort, it's about intention, it's about presence, it's about the energy you bring before you even open your mouth. Today, I'm going to show you the laziest way to become that kind of communicator. The kind who doesn't chase attention just gravitates toward you. Because trust me, you don't need another technique. You need to master your presence before you master your words. Most people don't understand how powerful that line really is. They think communication starts with speaking, perfecting sentences, memorizing scripts, polishing delivery. They assume the impact begins with vocabulary, but the truth is far deeper, far simpler, and far more uncomfortable. People feel you before they hear you. Your words come second. Your presence comes first. Think of the last time you met someone who walked into a room and immediately changed the atmosphere. They didn't say anything remarkable. They didn't force attention. They didn't try to dominate. Their presence alone spoke louder than any introduction they could have given. That's the difference between someone chasing credibility and someone who carries it naturally, and that difference has nothing to do with what they say. It has everything to do with who they are projecting themselves to be. Presence is built in silence long before it's expressed in speech. It comes from the way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you occupy space, the calmness in your eyes, the steadiness in your energy. People don't consciously analyze these details, but they feel them. They're drawn to someone who radiates control, clarity, and certainty. The human mind is wired to respond to leaders who look like they know where they're going. And that response triggers in the first 3 seconds, long before any sentence comes out of your mouth. That's why so many people fail in communication without even realizing it. They spend hours crafting the perfect message, but they show up with nervous shoulders, scattered focus, restless energy, and an insecure tone. Their presence sends a signal that contradicts everything they later say. That contradiction weakens the message before it even begins. You can't influence someone when your presence lacks authority. You can't persuade anyone when your energy is apologizing for itself. You can't inspire listeners when your body language broadcasts uncertainty. Presence is not about dominance or intimidation. It's about alignment. It's about showing up with a centered, grounded version of yourself that doesn't need validation from the room. It's confidence that doesn't need to declare itself. It's power that doesn't need to shout. It's calm that cuts through the noise. When your presence is aligned, your words become an extension of what you already are, not a tool you're using to hide what you're not. Mastering presence begins with controlling your breath. Breath is the foundation of your energy. Shallow breath signals fear. Slow, deep breath signals certainty. Before you speak, your breath determines your tone. Before you enter a room, your breath determines how you're perceived. When you breathe with intention, your entire nervous system shifts. Your posture resets, your energy settles, you communicate stability without needing a single word. Next comes eye contact, not aggressive, not confrontational, but connected. The kind of eye contact that shows you're here, fully here. Presence dies when your attention is scattered. When your mind jumps between insecurity and self-judgment, your eyes reflect it. But when you stay grounded in the moment, not overthinking, not evaluating yourself, your eyes convey a message far more powerful than any speech. I am centered, I am certain, I am enough. Then there's your posture. The way you hold yourself tells people whether you see yourself as small or significant. This doesn't require exaggeration. You don't need superhero poses or inflated gestures. Just a relaxed, open, intentional stance, shoulders down, chest open, chin neutral, movements slow. When your body occupies space with calm confidence, people instinctively listen. They don't know why, but they feel compelled to pay attention. Presence is also about the silence you're not afraid to keep. Most people rush to fill silence because silence exposes insecurity, but the person who can hold silence without fear is the person who controls the room. Silence is the canvas on which your presence paints. When you pause with intention, you deliver a message. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not seeking approval. I'm here because I choose to be, not because I'm desperate to be heard. And then, only then, do your words matter. When your presence is strong, your words hit harder. You don't even need many. You speak less but influence more. You communicate with simplicity, clarity, and purpose, because you're not using words to compensate for a weak presence. You're using words to amplify a powerful one. Mastering your presence before your words doesn't just improve communication, it transforms it. You stop performing and start embodying. You stop impressing and start impacting. You stop chasing attention and start commanding it effortlessly. People stop listening out of courtesy and start listening out of respect. Presence is the root, words are the branches. Most people try to grow the tree backward. But not you. You're mastering the foundation first. And once you do, the world won't just hear you, they'll feel you. That's what changes everything. Cut the noise, sharpen the message. Most people don't realize how much power they lose because they speak in circles. Their message is buried under unnecessary explanations, emotional overtalking, and mental clutter. They don't communicate, they wander, they don't deliver a point, they dance around it, hoping their words somehow land. But great communicators don't operate like that. They understand that clarity is the highest form of influence, and clarity begins with subtraction, not addition. The truth is simple. People don't remember everything you say. They remember the one thing that hits them, and that one thing only hits when you strip away the noise. Noise is the enemy of influence. Noise is the reason people forget your message. Noise is the reason people tune out, lose interest, or get confused halfway through your sentence. The mind craves clarity, the mind respects direction, the mind follows simplicity, and simplicity requires courage. The courage to let go of the extra words that feel comfortable but add no value. When you sharpen your message, you're not trying to sound smarter. You're trying to sound cleaner. A clean message cuts deeper, it carries weight, it doesn't float in the air, it lands, it sticks. It becomes something the listener can hold onto long after the conversation ends. That's what makes a communicator memorable, not how much they say, but how precisely they say it. Most people speak like they are afraid the silence will expose them, so they fill every gap with unnecessary noise. They add stories that don't matter, details that don't support the point, explanations that only dilute the message. They talk long instead of talking sharp, but length doesn't build respect, precision does. When every sentence has a purpose, every word feels intentional, and intention is what people trust. Cutting the noise isn't about talking less, it's about talking with purpose. It's about identifying what truly matters and removing everything that distracts from it. Think of it like a blade. The sharper it is, the more effortlessly it cuts. A dull blade forces you to apply pressure, repeat motions, and hope it works. A sharp blade, one motion, clean cut, done. That's the difference between a communicator who rambles and a communicator who commands. Sharpening your message begins with sharpening your mind. You cannot communicate clearly if your thoughts are chaotic. Before you speak, you must know exactly what you want to say, not 5 ideas, 1. Not 3 arguments, 1, not a cloud of thoughts, 1 solid point. Most people think speaking is the first step. It's not. The first step is clarity of intention. If you don't know your message, neither will anyone else. Take a moment before speaking and ask yourself, what is the real point I'm trying to make? What do I want the listener to walk away with? What matters here and what is simply noise? Then cut everything that doesn't serve the goal. You'll feel the difference immediately. Your voice becomes more certain. Your presence becomes more grounded. Your energy becomes more direct. People feel the shift because humans instinctively follow those who communicate with precision. It signals leadership, it signals confidence, it signals control, and remember this, when your message is sharp, your pauses gain power. Silence becomes a tool, not a weakness, because when you're not drowning your message with extra words, your audience actually has space to absorb it. The mind needs room to process, the heart needs room to feel. Your pause becomes a moment for impact to settle. That's something noise can never achieve. The greatest communicators in history are remembered for a few lines, not for long speeches. Because those lines were crafted with intention, they were refined, chipped away, cleansed of unnecessary weight. They were sharp, and anything sharp leaves a mark. But there's another layer to sharpening your message, emotional discipline. People add noise when they communicate emotionally instead of intentionally. They let ego speak, they let insecurity speak, they let fear speak, and fear always talks too much. Fear tries to convince. Fear over-explains, fear rambles, but confidence speaks in straight lines. Confidence doesn't need excess. Confidence doesn't need volume or complexity. Confidence lives in clarity. When you speak from a place of certainty, you naturally cut the noise. You stop trying to impress, you stop trying to be perfect, you stop trying to sound profound, you simply deliver the truth. Clean, strong, uncluttered, and nothing is more powerful than truth spoken with precision. Cut Cutting the noise makes your message unforgettable. Sharpening your message makes your voice undeniable. Because when you remove everything that doesn't matter, what remains is the most potent version of your communication. The version people listen to, the version people remember, the version people follow. Cut the noise, sharpen the message. That's how you turn words into impact. That's how you move from speaking to influencing. And once you do that, you won't just communicate better. You will be heard differently. Slow down to increase impact. Most people will never understand how powerful that principle truly is, because the world has conditioned them to rush. Rushing feels productive, rushing feels confident, rushing feels like you're doing something meaningful, but the reality is the exact opposite. The faster you speak, the more invisible you become. The more you rush, the less people absorb. The more you sprint through your words, the less authority you project. Speed kills impact. Silence magnifies it. Think about the people who command rooms effortlessly. They don't speak fast, they speak with intention. They let their words breathe, they give their message space to land. They aren't afraid of pauses because pauses reveal presence. They aren't afraid of silence because silence exposes certainty. They move slowly, not because they're uncertain, but because they're in control of themselves, of the atmosphere, of the listener's attention. When you slow down, you change the rhythm of the room. People lean in. They pay attention, they sense that something meaningful is coming. Your pace becomes a signal. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to deliver the truth. I'm not rushing to be heard. I'm speaking to be felt. Speed is for people who want approval. Stillness is for people who own their message. Whenever you rush, you communicate insecurity. You signal that you're not fully grounded in your own thoughts. You communicate that you're afraid of losing your audience. You reveal that you don't fully trust your own message to hold weight. But when you slow down, every single thing you say grows heavier. People stop hearing your words and start feeling your presence. The mind processes fast speech as noise. It processes slow speech as authority. When you slow down, you're not dragging the message. You're sharpening it. You're making it impossible to ignore. You're giving the listener the time and space they need to absorb what matters. Impact has a rhythm, and that rhythm is slow, intentional, precise. Slowing down is not just about pacing. It's about emotional discipline. It's about resisting the urge to rush through discomfort. When you feel nervous, your instinct is to talk quickly to get it over with. But speed doesn't hide nerves, it amplifies them. Slowness, however, does the opposite. It calms your body, it calms your voice, it calms your energy, it signals that you're steady, it signals that you're centered. It signals that you're not controlled by pressure. You control it. When you slow down, you start to hear yourself. You start to feel your own words. You become intentional with your tone, your emphasis, your pauses. You're not speaking to fill time, you're speaking to deliver meaning. People can tell the difference immediately. They don't just listen, they respect it. One of the most powerful aspects of slowing down is the way it reshapes silence. Most people fear silence because silence feels like exposure, but silence is not weakness. Silence is presence. Silence is command. Silence tells people you're comfortable enough with yourself that you don't need to fill every gap. Silence communicates, I own this moment. A slow communicator is a confident communicator. Not sluggish, not lazy, not uncertain, but measured, thoughtful, deliberate. When you slow down, you shift from reacting to leading. You take control of the narrative. You decide the pace, not your emotions, not the audience, not the anxiety. That's power most people will never access because they're too busy trying to outrun their own fear. Slowing down also reveals clarity. When your mind is racing, your message becomes diluted. But when your mind is still, your message becomes sharp. You stop over-explaining. You stop rambling. You stop tripping over your own thoughts. You begin expressing one clean idea at a time, and clean ideas are the ones that get remembered. Think about the most iconic speeches in history. None of them were delivered quickly. The speakers used silence as punctuation. They used pace as persuasion. They understood something most people miss. Speed is forgettable. Stillness is unforgettable. Slowing down is a form of respect, not just for the audience, but for your own message. It says, this matters, listen. And people do, because the world is full of fast talkers. The world is full of noise. But when someone speaks slowly, intentionally, with presence, it cuts through the chaos. It hits differently. It feels like truth. When you slow down, you create impact, you create weight, you create authority, you create connection. You create space for people to actually feel the meaning behind your words, not just hear the sound of them. Slow down to increase impact, slow down to be remembered, slow down to communicate like someone who doesn't chase attention, someone who commands it. Listen twice as hard as you speak. Most people hear that line and think it's a motivational quote. It's not, it's a doorway into power most people never access. Because communication has never been about who talks the most, it's about who understands the most. And understanding doesn't come from speaking. It comes from listening with depth, with intention, with presence so strong the other person feels seen before you even respond. There's a reason the greatest communicators say less. They don't need to dominate the conversation to control it. They don't need to speak endlessly to influence the moment. They listen so sharply, so fully, so intensely that by the time they speak, their words already carry weight. Listening is not passive, it's an active form of power. And the person who listens the best often becomes the person everyone listens to. Most people don't listen, they wait. They wait for their turn to talk. They wait for a moment to insert their opinion. They wait to defend themselves, to prove themselves, to sound intelligent. But while they're busy crafting their next sentence, they're missing the message right in front of them. They're missing the truth. They're missing the emotional cues, the subtle signals, the unspoken meanings. They're hearing sound, but they're not absorbing substance. When you listen twice as hard as you speak, everything changes. You no longer react. You respond. You no longer guess. You understand. You no longer talk to fill space. You talk to add value. Listening is what gives your words purpose. Without listening, you're just making noise. But with listening, your words become solutions. Listening is not just about catching what someone says. It's about catching what they're trying to say but don't know how. Listening means hearing the hesitation in their tone, the emotion behind their words, the conflict inside their pauses. It's reading the silence. It's decoding the energy. It's recognizing when someone needs clarity, not commentary. When someone needs assurance, not answers. When someone needs space, not speeches. When you listen deeply, people trust you. Trust doesn't come from talking well. Trust comes from making people feel understood. No one remembers the person who talked non-stop. Everyone remembers the person who listened and made them feel safe enough to speak the truth. Listening twice as hard also gives you control. When you listen more, you gather more information. You see the full picture. You understand the motives, the fears, the pressures, the opportunities. And when you finally speak, your words come from a place of awareness, not assumption. That level of awareness is what separates good communicators from exceptional ones. Listening also builds emotional intelligence. You start recognizing patterns in people. You start anticipating needs before they're expressed. You start understanding behavior at a deeper level. You stop taking things personally because you see beyond the words into the intention. You stop reacting to tone and start understanding context. This level of insight makes you more stable, more patient, more effective. Most people think communication is about expressing yourself, but real communication is about connecting, and you can't connect if you're the only one talking. Listening opens doors that speaking can't. Listening earns respect that talking won't. Listening makes people feel valued in a way that words alone never can. Listening twice as hard also forces you to slow down your ego. Ego talks fast. Ego interrupts. Ego assumes. Ego reacts. Ego hears what it wants, not what's actually being said. But presence listens. Presence waits. Presence absorbs. Presence seeks truth, not victory. People can feel the difference between someone who's quiet because they have nothing to say, and someone who's quiet because they're taking everything in. The second person controls the room without effort. The second person speaks last, but their words end the conversation. The second person doesn't need volume. They carry power in silence. Listening is also the shortcut to speaking better. When you listen deeply, your answers become sharper. Your examples become relevant. Your tone becomes aligned. You don't talk in generalities. You talk with precision. You don't wander. You hit the target because you actually understand what the target is. Listening twice as hard is a mindset shift. It means choosing to understand before choosing to be understood. It means valuing comprehension over expression. It means allowing silence to do some of the work. It means trusting that your influence doesn't come from dominating space, but from mastering it. When you listen twice as hard as you speak, your relationships improve. Your leadership improves, your influence multiplies, and your communication becomes something people respect, not just hear. People will start looking to you for clarity, not noise, for support, not debate, for guidance, not arguments. Listen twice as hard as you speak. Because those who listen deeply speak powerfully, and those who speak powerfully are the ones the world listens to repeat what matters until it becomes unforgettable. Most people have no idea how influence actually works. They think mastery comes from saying new things all the time, constantly reinventing, constantly adding, constantly expanding. They believe repetition makes them sound boring or predictable. But that's only because they've never understood the real psychology of impact. The truth is simple. People don't remember what they hear once. They remember what they hear consistently. Repetition is not a weakness, it's a weapon. And the people who understand this are the ones whose messages shape minds, shape behavior, and shape legacies. Repetition is how you turn information into identity. It's how you transform words into belief. It's how you take a simple idea and drive it so deep into someone's mind that it becomes part of their operating system. Humans don't change from a single moment of inspiration. They change from consistent reminders of the same truth until it finally clicks, until it finally stays, until it finally becomes part of them. That's why repeating what matters isn't optional. It's essential. Most people fear repetition because they're insecure. They think people will judge them for sounding the same, but understand this. The people who judge repetition are the same ones who forget the message. The people who benefit from repetition are the ones who grow. So you have a choice. Do you want to impress people temporarily or impact people permanently? Because you can't do both. Impact requires repetition. Influence requires consistency. Authority requires saying the same powerful thing until it sinks in. Repetition also shows conviction. When you repeat something, it means you believe in it enough to stand by it. It means the message matters. It means it's worth hearing again, and people feel that conviction. They feel the weight behind it. In a world full of voices that constantly switch their opinions, change their tone, and adjust their message to fit the moment, a consistent message becomes a lighthouse, a reference point, a source of stability. Repeating what matters also gives your message structure. People need structure more than they need novelty. They need clarity more than they need entertainment. They need reminders more than they need surprises. Every great teacher, leader, coach, and communicator uses repetition intentionally. They understand that one powerful truth repeated consistently is more valuable than 10 new ideas thrown once. Repetition doesn't make your message weaker. It makes your message unforgettable. Think about the phrases that changed your life. They weren't things you heard once. They were things you heard many times at different moments in different situations until suddenly one day the meaning exploded inside you. That's the power of repetition. It doesn't just inform, it transforms. Repeating what matters is also a discipline. It forces you to filter out the noise and focus on the core message. Instead of being scattered, you become centered. Instead of trying to say everything, you focus on saying the thing that actually builds change. Great communicators aren't trying to sound interesting. They are trying to make you stronger, and strength comes from the fundamentals repeated to excellence. The mind needs repetition to learn. The heart needs repetition to believe. Behavior needs repetition to shift. So if you want to impact someone deeply, you don't need to overwhelm them. You just need to say the right thing often enough that it becomes impossible to forget. That's how ideas turn into habits. That's how advice turns into action. That's how lessons turn into results. Repetition is also how leaders build culture. A culture is just a set of repeated values, repeated standards, repeated expectations. When something is repeated consistently, people start aligning with it automatically. It becomes normal, it becomes accepted, it becomes the default. That's what makes repetition one of the most effective leadership tools on the planet. Most people give up on their message too early. They say something once, and if people don't react, they assume it didn't work. But influence isn't measured by instant reaction. Influence is measured by lasting retention. The message that sticks is the message that wins, and the message that wins is the one you repeat until it carves its place into the listener's mind. Repeating what matters also shows responsibility. You care enough about the listener to reinforce what will actually help them. You care enough to make sure the truth doesn't fade. You care enough to push the message past their ears and into their life. That is the difference between communicating for attention and communicating for transformation. Repeat what matters until it becomes unforgettable, not because people are slow, not because they're not listening, but because what truly matters deserves to be heard more than once. Repetition is not redundancy, repetition is reinforcement, repetition is influence, repetition is mastery. Say what matters, say it clearly. Say it consistently. Say it until the world remembers. So hear me clearly. You don't need to talk more. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to force influence. The laziest and most effective way to become a top 1% communicator is to upgrade who you are before you speak. Your silence should have weight, your words should have purpose, your presence should have power. Communication is not about the mouth, it's about the mindset, and once you master that, people won't just listen to you. They'll follow you, not because you're loud, but because you're undeniable.